Cheers, brother.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Ramzi, I'm happy to have you on the podcast.
Holy shit.
I have been visiting Dolores Deluxe since basically you guys opened. And it's been, of course, and it's always been so cool to kind of like watch the evolution take place. And you've been there a lot. You've put in a lot of time. And I can't wait for us to get into the point of the story where we get to hear kind of like all the hurdles that you've gone through. Yeah. But I remember like some of the setbacks and stuff, and I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, cut this guy a break, right? And so anyways, thanks for being our neighborhood store. Thanks for being the place we can stop in. Of course. I mean, there's something, we lived in North Beach for, a couple years, and there's something invaluable about having a corner store like a block or two away.
Of course, yeah.
And, some of the more neighborhood areas in San Francisco don't have that. And so it's important to us, and it's important for us to support that, because it's also like, if you don't support it, it's not going to stay. Right. And also what you're doing is really cool. It's not just like Lay's and Monsters. Sure. It's like thoughtful things, and
there's still Lay's and Monsters.
There's still Lay's and Monsters.
And condoms and milk and toilet paper. But there's like other shit.
And cool shit. Yeah. And like even for geeky people, like, gastronomically inclined people, there's still a lot of cool things too. Thanks. So so I'm happy to have you here, and happy to have you in the neighborhood.
Dude, it's great to be here. This is awesome. I mean, it's I'm about 2 years. I'm a little over 2 years into the journey here, and so like I'm really pushing myself to take advantage of the luxury of sitting down with people and actually having like a long form conversation with them. It's a big reason why I was so excited to sit down with you here, and why I've like also started recording long form content, so that I can just like slow the fuck down. And talk to people that I respect and that I'm curious about. And it's different, like in the store, hurling like pleasantries over a counter with like rap music playing or whatever it is that we're playing in the moment. Or like if I'm in the shits, like it's hard for me to be really present. So this is a great practice for me, just in general. So thank you. Yeah.
Or equally so, when I go in and, our daughter's having some tummy troubles and I have to come in and get apple juice, and I'm in sweatpants and a dirty undershirt, and I just like walk in, I grab it, I pay, and I leave. I'm like, I love you guys. Don't fucking talk to me.
Yeah, for sure. I get that too. Yeah. Well, that's hard coming from like a certain restaurant background as well, where you're like, and I've worked in hotel restaurants where people will roll down in their robe, right? Like, but you're still their host.
Yeah.
Sometimes people don't want you to be their host in a setting like that, and so I've had to learn and adjust my methods.
The read.
Yeah, exactly.
But the vintage dated apple juice is my daughter liked that. Thank you. Really good. She crushed it. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, the Etienne Dupont.
Yeah.
That stuff is so good.
Yeah. And I said, "Is it good?" And I tried it. I was like, "Oh shit, it's really good.
Fucking good. It's really good. It's expensive, but like it's really fucking good. It's gonna be really expensive next year with the tariffs.
Oh God.
So we can talk about that later. But
Cool. Well, so the deal, the vibe. I guess, tell us your story. Where are you from?
Yeah.
It sounds like you've been in a couple different areas. You've, in fact, know one of our previous guests or non. Yeah. So I'm really excited to hear kind of like how that tracks and kind of hear your journey. So
yeah, it's definitely been, I mean, as for a lot of us, especially counting COVID, it's been a circuitous journey, I think, for everybody in this industry. But even like going further back, I don't know how far back you want me to go, but I'm just going to go for it.
Go for it. Yeah.
I was born here in San Francisco, and my mom and I moved to New York when I was 6, but my dad stayed here my whole life. So I was kind of a bi-coastal child. I still have my like unaccompanied minor like badges. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I was one of those kids that kind of knew what he wanted to do from like age 4.
That's awesome.
I come from 3 generations of doctors, so you would think medicine, right?
Doctor.
So all the Lebanese aunties were like Hakim, which means like doctor in Arabic, and I'd say no, chef. I want to be a chef.
Yeah.
And so I cooked, like, I started cooking for my family, like, at the age of 9, like proper dinners, and then kept adding more things to my plate. We were a big hosting family on the East Coast. So, and I went to an international school, so a lot of the kids didn't do Thanksgiving. So we would have them over at our house, and it started out like 15 people. And then by the time I graduated high school, we had 80 people at our house.
Holy
and
shit.
I was coordinating all the food.
Wow.
So I was always into it.
Yeah.
I even started, it's kind of embarrassing. I started a catering company when I was 15 called Granny Smith Catering.
Sick.
And like I Google imaged like a Granny Smith apple, and I went on like Zazzle.com and I got a white t-shirt with a big Granny Smith apple on it, and then on the back, I like remember it to this day. I had my cell phone number in like Helvetica font.
Yeah.
It just said Granny, and I still had braces.
Yeah.
And my like stepsister drove me to
Sounds
my
like
gigs.
a food bank shirt.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it was such a strange thing that I was like hell bent on doing.
That's so cool.
That was fun. Yeah, it was definitely fun. And then, come like college, I was like, all right, like, Mom, Dad, I want to go to culinary school. And they're like, cool, that's not happening.
Yeah.
You're going to business school. And so that's what I did. I went to Boston University for business and graduated, moved back to New York because my mom was having some health issues. And then I like legit started in the corporate world. Ironically, at Weight Watchers International corporate office.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, which is on 24th and Madison in the Credit Suisse building on the 11th floor.
Okay.
11 is a number that shows up a lot in my life.
I like that.
So I got promoted. This was like right after the recession. And I was legit like the only male that worked there that was under the age of 50 that was like hetero. And they were launching the Weight Watchers for Men campaign with like Charles Barkley in a dress.
Oh yeah, I forgot about
remember
that.
that.
Yeah.
And so like in the lead up to the campaign, they wanted a young dude in the meetings. So they just promoted me.
Yeah.
And they brought me downstairs to the restaurant in the lobby for lunch. Turns out that restaurant was 11 Madison Park.
Casually one of the best restaurants in the world.
But here's the thing. Back then, it was a 3-course meal for $56. And it was a 1 Michelin star restaurant.
Yeah.
And I was reading Setting the Table at the time because Shake Shack was across the street. And, I was like kind of still caught up in this idea of like one day owning a restaurant. Yeah. And so I was on the chapter where Danny opened 11 Madison Park in Tabla within the same year. I go through the revolving doors and like a Miles Davis song, a very particular kind of obscure Miles Davis song is playing. And it's the same song that I played like in college to study for like my exams. And I just thought that was so fucking weird. And I've obviously had just like the best meal ever. And so I go back to my desk and I'm just buzzing. And for days and then later weeks and eventually like months, I just keep like walking by that restaurant and I'm like faking that I smoke cigarettes so that I can go on a cigarette break and I'm staring at the like literally, this is not a joke. I know it sounds like it's a movie, but I'm like looking like, should I go inside? And one day I just went inside and I asked if they had any positions available. And they kind of looked me up and down and they're like, well, it's like winter time. It's like, well, we're looking for coat check attendants. And I was like, cool, can I apply?
Wow.
And like I was making pretty good money.
Yeah.
And then they were offering $5 an hour plus tip. So I staged and I met with Will. And at that point, Will was the GM. This is before Hernan's time. And he was pretty dubious, but I was really hell-bent on joining. And I actually had like a family friend that did the jazz like programming for Blue Note, which is under... Is it Blue Note? No, it's not Blue Note. Jazz Standard under Blue Smoke, Andy Meyer's barbecue place.
Okay, right.
Which was in the same family. And so he like put in a good word for me and basically they're like, okay, fine, we'll let this guy check coats.
Yeah.
Just so happened that I joined like right before the sale from Danny to Will and Chef Daniel. Right before the restaurant jumped from 1 Michelin stars to 3 Michelin stars. Like all this stuff was happening
Yeah.
like right as I came, and I had
Full
no idea what
whirlwind.
the hell I was doing. And this
Yeah.
is basically like I had staged in restaurants as a kid, and like my parents let me, go knock on the back door
Entertain
and
the idea.
yeah, exactly. But like I never really worked in a restaurant until 11 Madison Park, and like when that sale happened, there was this huge power vacuum. All these people went to work with us at USHG. And so they just started promoting people way before they were ready,
yeah.
or at least in my case, I wasn't ready. And so I basically like went up the guest relations route. I was like host reservationist and then maitre d' and then head maitre d'. And I really loved that role, but it's like I wanted to get into service. And so I convinced Will to let me run food one day a week. And then that slowly like took over my life. And then I worked in the dining room, and I was there for basically 3 years. Worked my way up, and I at the time, I guess I'd left. I was like ready for something bigger. And it was my
Bigger
own,
than 11 Madison.
Well, no, ready for, certainly
Right.
not. Actually, to your point, it's an interesting, like, because that I was thinking about that. It's like your first job is like one of the best restaurants in the world. At the time that I was leaving, in the big leagues,
Yeah.
the time I was leaving, it was like number 25 in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
It was 3 Michelin stars. Like, what do you do after that?
Yeah.
If you've never worked in other restaurants,
Yeah.
right? And so I was like kind of at a loss
Yeah.
at that point. But I knew I needed to have an experience outside of that company. And so I ended up doing some consulting, actually. I, like, through a friend, got connected to this, like, staffing and, like, consultancy agency in London that was opening restaurants in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. My family's in Beirut. I wanted to be close to Beirut. And so I, like, opened a few projects in the Middle East. And that was fucking wild because I was like also so young. I was 24 and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But like, honestly, like, this is kind of, I think, a strength of a lot of like front of house people. Like I'm kind of a good bullshitter, you know?
Yeah.
Like still now,
Yeah.
but like I was definitely better at it because I like didn't care about the repercussions
Sure.
back then. You know,
You're young, you're invincible.
Yeah,
I'll bounce back.
Exactly. They'll figure it out once I'm long gone.
Right,
I'm like, no, but like I never like lied about what I did, but I think I just I also had this sense that like I could do anything, right? Because I felt so unbelievably lucky to have done what I had just done, right? And to be surrounded by like the greatest front of house people on the planet at the time. Like it just felt like the peak years, right? So that definitely gives you a little extra boost of confidence. And so I went in and did my thing. And then I remember somebody got wind of what I was doing and told Will Gadara. And Will, I don't know if it was like he called me or he told the person. I think he told the person that I should call him immediately.
Yeah.
And like he wasn't my boss, and I still like called him immediately.
Of course.
You know?
Yeah.
And he's like, "What the fuck are you doing with your time?" Like, because these restaurants were like kind of like club restaurant-y, you know, like there was some fine dining element to it, but like not really. You know, it was kind of a cash grab, and it was also just convenient being close to Beirut.
Yeah.
So I tried to explain that to him. He's like, "All right, stop what you're doing, come home." And so I came back to Nomad at that point. And so I started out. He's like, "Just work in the dining room for a little while, and then we'll push you up." And so I started out as a captain, and that was honestly like working Nomad at the time that like EMP was number 4 and was trying to get to number 1. And like Sarah Rosenberg from Wicked GM, who was like really, I think, integral in like getting that group to ascend to that next level. She was sort of like, it felt like she was just really puppeteering like and coordinating both restaurants to support getting the voters in and just blowing them out of the water. So I got to like work on a lot of that, and like such an amazing learning opportunity, and so incredibly like creatively enriching as well. Because you know, it was all about like making legends is a big part of like the culture of Make It Nice. The Dreamweaver position that some people, have you heard of this?
I haven't heard of this.
There's like a person on staff. I don't know if it exists now. It probably does, but there's a person on staff that like their job is to like basically make legends, like do things that are so off script, but taken from little kernels of information that guests are dropping during the meal.
Like cheeseburgers in the dining room. And
Cheeseburger in the dining room, or like, you know, somebody, I remember Billy Peel, he was service director back then. Somebody had like heard about all these legends and was like, oh, well, I challenge you to give me $1 million. And Billy's like so fucking smart. He got 10, he got 10 100 grand chocolate bars and hid it under their table.
That's so funny.
Like, you know, like these little things that are cheeky and like really wonderful and delightful. But like now there is a dedicated artist on staff that will do paintings and like create like gift baskets or like collages or set them up like as a concierge, like set them up with reservations to this play that they talked about wanting to go to that they weren't able to score to, like just crazy shit, you know? And like my initial role at EMP was that before that role even existed.
Right.
And so I was able to take a lot of that like creativity into my role at the Nomad, became a dining room manager, became service director, and then at that point, they were getting ready to open Nomad LA. And my dad lives here. He's continued to live here my whole life, and I'd actually never lived in California as an adult.
Wow.
So it just felt like, you know, I'd been in New York for 18 years. You know, outside of like my time in the Middle East and my time in college, middle school, like high school, my 20s, it's all in New York. And I juiced that lemon like pretty fucking well. Like there's just pith left on that one. Yeah. So I just felt ready, and I felt like the Nomad crew was in a good place, and we had like hired a bunch of people and kind of brought them up through the ranks, and a lot of them are just crushing it right now. Like now that Nomad's closed, but they're off doing just amazing things. So I came out to LA and got Nomad open, and Nomad LA was 5 restaurants in one building.
Wow.
We had 250 food and beverage employees.
God damn.
Yeah, and I was 27.
Yeah.
I was 27 years old, and I was not ready for that position, and certainly not ready for, I think, that project, and sort of how that project would be received, like how that the initial vision of bringing a New York experience to LA, and witnessing firsthand that wasn't really resonating for people, but then also sort of being the messenger, the liaison between this community that I'm now a part of and these, you know, visionaries that like you've seen just crush it with every project, saying, no, this is the vision, we're sticking to it. And you're like, well, there's some dissonance, right? Where you're like, oh, I want to support this because like you guys are amazing, but these people are telling us
but it's not working.
It's not working.
Yeah.
So that was really tough. That felt like sort of the beginning of the chink in the armor for that group. Yeah. Where we closed the Mezzanine restaurant, which was sort of like the traditional Nomad New York experience. And that was super tough. I had to like personally lay off over 150 people. Oh, like me. Yeah. Personally. It was like, God. I had the worst panic attack in my life. So bad. Yeah, it was really, really bad. So, and
did you have to do them one at a time, or did you do it all at once?
Oh no, I did one at a time.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, and the way it worked too is that like, I don't know, we talked about this a little bit before, but there is like a masochistic quality to this industry. Yeah. I also feel because even though I started like relatively young, I knew so many people that started much younger than me, right? And like, And because I started at that level, I felt like I didn't belong from the beginning. I felt like this baked in imposter syndrome.
Sure.
So I just always felt like I needed to prove that I was willing to go the extra mile.
Right.
You know, like I
Yeah.
had this really warped sort of toxic,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you know?
I still need to prove myself.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter how many people tell me I'm good.
Yeah.
I still need to prove myself.
Yeah. And that like ambition, because I was good, like I was good, like, but that ambition I think also might have rubbed some people the wrong way, because it's like I'm competing against myself.
Yeah.
But it seems like I'm also competing against you,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
I'm not. But like anyway, that's
I am
a lot
holding you
of-
to a high standard because I hold myself to a high standard.
Yeah. Well, that's like a lot of, I think, high achieving like 20 somethings.
Yeah.
And there's, that's what therapy's for.
Yeah.
You gotta prove yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, so after that experience, that definitely left a bit of a scar.
Sure.
But we did persevere and slog through, and like we were able to sort of capture and retain and foster a good amount of the culture that made the New York Nomad and the Make It Nice like family so strong. And I do have to say, like, our training, like our orientation, our onboarding, the fact that we were able to process and like and inspire so many people in that like first 6 months, and train like a new generation of hospitality professionals in LA, even though LA has a great restaurant culture. Right. I just don't know that it has historically had the best service culture.
This is different. Yeah.
Different.
Yeah.
So we were able, I think, to bring a certain level of service culture that didn't exist to LA in LA before that. And you're still seeing that now. Like there's still like the alumni, like family tree, branching out and doing really great things. So anyhow, after that project, I was at this point in my career where it's like, all right, I want to go out and do my own thing. I'm not ready. I need like some time to process what just happened. So I did a little bit more consulting, but I did it within LA. And then I had a chef his name is Alex Chang, legitimately the most talented chef I've ever worked with. Still to this day, like I can taste his food. So smart, so creative, and so like, I don't want to say soft-spoken, just so direct and clear and concise in his vision without being a dick.
Right.
Like just so he actually cooked the very first meal I had in LA when I moved to LA, which was at the Freehand Hotel, which is also in the Siddell like family. And so LA, he's half Chinese, half Mexican, trained in Tokyo, and was cooking at an Israeli restaurant.
Oh, great.
You know?
Wow.
So I'm eating like this food that's very similar to my culture, but it's like kind of fucked up in a good way.
Yeah.
And I was loving everything.
That's so cool.
And so he was like at a point where he was ready to get something open. And he asked me if I would be interested. And so we kind of started out by doing pop-ups. And that concept was called Kiko. And our pop-ups were really fucking fun. And it was like, I'd done pop-ups in my early 20s. And it felt like I felt so free creatively to really flex and like get weird and have it really be a reflection of like myself. And there was a lot of like, we went way over the top on like incorporating art, incorporating music, incorporating like other mediums, plateware, flatware, glassware. Like we basically opened a full restaurant, right? Like for every pop-up that we did. And they were really successful, and they made good money, but they, more importantly, like I think they built a really cool community and a cool following. And we were getting to a point where we were like looking at investors, and we had some like moneyed people lined up. Identified a space, getting ready to put down the LOI, and this is now Ori Menashe's restaurant Safi's.
Okay.
Across the street from the Church of Scientology on Fountain, across from Found Oyster. So that space is now a very successful restaurant, which makes me feel good. But we were basically about to sign the lease, and COVID hit.
Yeah.
And he moved to Miami because that's where he started his career, and Miami was still open.
There's still stuff open.
Yeah, and as a chef, like very good way to make money.
Yep.
And I was in LA, and I was hanging out with my friend Tyler, who was a CDC at this restaurant with the guys from Sundays in Brooklyn. The place with the big ass pancake.
Okay.
Anyway, it's a great restaurant in downtown LA. And he worked with me at Nomad. And so I was staying with him in his studio apartment, and then shelter in place hits. And I'm like, what do I do now? Like, do I go home? And he's like, well, just like stick around for a few days and then we'll figure it out. So I'm like sleeping on his couch. And then like we figure it out, and we're like, well, fuck, like, do I stay here for a while now? And he's like, well, we gotta do something. Like,
yeah.
And so the restaurant that he was the CDC at was a like Mediterranean pasta place, and it had this Arcobaleno like $27,000 pasta machine. And somehow he convinced the owners to let him wheel it on a utility cart through downtown LA into his studio apartment.
Oh.
And so we're like, all right, well, let's just like sell some fresh pasta because there's no pasta on the shelves.
Yeah.
Right. And we did. That's exactly what we did. And actually, I think the idea came from like our friend Lena, who's Alex Chang's now wife, was making sauce. And so it's like, oh, we'll do the pasta, you do the sauce, and like we'll like sell it on Instagram or some shit. And then I'm like, no, like it's me. Like I got to do a brand. Like I'm like very brand like storytelling oriented. And so I came up with this idea to call it, because the ingredients are flour, eggs, and water, right? So, and I didn't even think about flour and water, which is fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
But it's called Few for All.
Few for all.
Few for All.
Okay.
And the model was for every item we sold, we would donate a pound of dry pasta to the food bank. So it was like the Tom's model.
Yeah.
And we literally just started with like fresh pasta in quart containers, right? Because we had a shit ton of quart containers from their dry storage. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
And then that kind of grew. We started making sauces, and then we like worked with the pastry chef in the restaurant, and she made cookie dough, like cinnamon rolls, and then bread and yogurt and like all this shit. And then we were doing all this. I mean, we said we were doing it out of a commissary. It was out of his apartment.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like, sorry
Yeah.
to all of our old fans or whatever. But yeah, it was out of his studio apartment. And honestly, like, it was bad for the whole crew's like mental health.
Sure.
Like, you know, we were working out of there. I was basically sleeping there a lot of the time.
Yeah.
It was just not a good vibe.
Yeah.
And so we needed to like find a new space. And very luckily, there was a commissary kitchen that had, unfortunately for them, lost a lot of tenants because of this situation. And they were willing to donate a private kitchen to allow us to scale because of the good that we were doing. Because at that point, like, we were growing really fast. We ended up, we were on TV. Like, we were in, like, influencers, and, like, people with, like, 1 million+ followings in LA were, like, randomly DMing to buy this thing. And it just grew, like, organically, like wildfire. And so we moved into that space, and then we started a meal kit called Table 60, which is the table I sat at 11 Madison Park that very first lunch.
That's so cool.
That like made me fall in love with hospitality, right? And so we didn't tell people the story, but that was just like a little insider thing. And the way that worked is we would source an item from a local restaurant that was still open, include that in the kit. Then we would build your own antipasti, like with beautiful garnish and all this stuff. There was like 3 little, like a dip, a salad, whatever, a pasta dish, and then a dessert. But what made it like so crazy is like we had this cartoonist that worked for the New Yorker that reached out to us that offered to design the menu for free. It's so cool. We did like little salt shaker as a bud vase with like fresh flour that was donated.
Right.
Bottle of wine, tablecloth. yeah.
So cool.
Candle.
Yeah.
Playlist that you would play sequentially. And the best part is it was pay what you can.
Right. Wow.
And it's all in a tote bag.
Yeah.
You pay what you can.
Yeah.
And so there were some people that bought this whole meal for $50.
Yeah.
And then there were some people that paid $1,000.
Yeah.
There was one person that paid $3,500.
Holy shit.
And the way it worked is like, okay, past our like the amount I think there was different amounts for different ones, but like past a certain amount, we donate the rest to the food bank.
Wow.
Right. So that was part of it too. It was like donation drive.
Yeah.
That got the attention of Bill Addison, the restaurant critic from LA, who ordered one, who then featured us in the LA Times in basically a restaurant review of a podcast, of a pop-up that we did randomly
Yeah.
out of my friend's apartment.
Yeah.
And then it was just fucking bananas.
Yeah.
Then it was just crazy.
Wow.
Everything I'm describing right now, which it's funny now, like, as I'm kind of hearing myself talk about this is my first time, like, really talking through the whole thing. I'm dedicating so much, like, time and energy to this, like, 2-month period.
2 months is all it was.
It was really, like, it was 3.5 months.
Right.
But what I'm describing right now is about two and a half months.
So transformative, though.
It's so transformative.
Yeah.
And, like, it gave me such an amazing insight into the power of community, the need for community, and also the need to trust in community.
Right.
Like, I relinquished so much of, like, the traditional model, and that worked better
Right.
than just, here's a random number I came up with based on a, Excel spreadsheet that my mentor sent me about how you cost your food.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, just trust. And of course, COVID was a very particular time.
Very trying.
Very trying, and emotions were high, and that was also true for positive emotion, I think. Like, we wanted to ride those highs a little harder.
Yeah.
Because the lows were so low.
Right.
So I recognize that. I also recognize that whole situation was not sustainable for any of us from a mental health perspective.
Yeah.
And we were in downtown LA during the, like, rioting and the National Guard deployment, and we were, like, right there. I'm going to skip over the part where I shaved my head, but that actually happened.
I had a big, long handlebar mustache.
Okay, cool.
The pandemic was fucked.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you commiserating with me.
Yeah.
But there was a moment there where I was like, I can't. And it was also around the time that my chef partners were called back into work.
Wow.
And it was like, we were sort of at this juncture where it's like, do we go off and, like, double down on the stream at a point where we're basically withered? Well, we've withered ourselves away.
Yeah.
And also risk, like, not having health insurance, which like they got all that stuff. They got their salary, they got health insurance. And we tried to keep it going because it was so successful. But I didn't want to do it myself. I couldn't keep it going. And frankly, at that point, like, I also just didn't feel very good about being in America. Like, as a person, I didn't feel safe, like, being in America. And so that's when I started the process of trying to get out of the US. I don't have my Lebanese passport, so my American passport was the only thing I could use, and there was no way on an American passport to leave unless you had a student visa.
Right.
So now, like, circling back all the way to high school.
Back to school. Yeah.
Go to culinary school.
Oh.
Yeah. So I applied to Cordon Bleu in Paris. I speak French, and I have family in France, and I have, like, all my friends from my international school live there. So yeah, I applied for patisserie and boulangerie in Paris, and didn't think I was going to get my visa in time, and it came, like, literally 5 days before the program started. This is at a time when I had also started dating somebody that I, like, knew from childhood in the Bay Area, because I didn't think that visa was going through.
Right.
This will be important in a second, but went and, like, finally got to fulfill this lifelong dream of being in culinary school. And it was weird too, because I was like,
but also starting in some of the best setting possible.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah. But also, like, still feeling really new and, like, an imposter a little bit, and a bit strange as well, because, like, in France, it's quite unusual unless you're doing this as like a second thing or as a hobby, it's unusual for somebody my age, and certainly with the experience I had in restaurants, to be in a class with like an 18-year-old.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, like it was
get the
weird.
San Francisco experience
Here.
So.
Of course.
Yeah.
Another tsunami.
Yeah. Or tornado.
Or tornado.
Yeah.
Good times.
It's been great.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'll skip through that experience just because like it was as awesome as it sounds.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was great. It was great. But I was doing a long distance relationship with somebody that I had known since I was like 4.
Right.
And we tried to get her to come to Paris, but she was an engineer.
Yeah.
And they're very particular about what diploma you have.
Sure.
So then it was like, all right, well, let me like apply for a job here in the Bay. And if I get the job, then I'll move.
Yeah.
So I did.
Yeah.
I won't say where.
Sure.
But it was a very, very good restaurant as a GM. And as soon as I landed, after moving all of my shit from Paris, they rescinded the offer. Oh. Yeah. So I'm just going to fast forward this last part because I feel like I'm going on forever.
No, it's fine. Yeah.
But yeah, basically I didn't know what the fuck I was going to do.
Yeah.
So I just started doing like private chefing stuff, and then I was like, I decided I wanted to like bake professionally to keep the muscle memory like active. And then I linked up with Serena Chow Fisher, who I used to work with at 11 Madison Park, who at the time had just opened Marlena with her husband Dave, and they were looking for help, and so I was helping them over the weekends, and then eventually they're like, hey, do you want to like be our GM? And I'm like, listen, I'm at a point in my career where I kind of want to be a partner or not.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, well, we'll keep looking.
Yeah.
It's like, no worries. Great. I'll keep helping. And then like 6 weeks later, at that point, it was so hard finding talent. They're like, okay, what are your terms?
Yeah, right.
And so I ended up becoming a partner at Marlena. So it all kind of just worked out.
Yeah.
And then a few months after that, we got a Michelin star.
Yeah.
And then we went from being open 5 days a week to 7 days a week. And so I was working there 7 days a week. And that was really hard.
Yeah.
But it was really exhilarating.
Sure.
And such a great learning experience for me. Because, like, here's the thing. Like, I have a lot of experience, and I've worked with unbelievably talented people. But I've always been a bit, like, flat-footed in every role. Like, I've always been a little bit behind where I think I should be.
Sure.
And in a way, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Because it makes me push a little bit
Gives
harder.
you something to strive for.
Gives me something to strive for. And it means I'm like learning a lot, right? It just also means like I'm uncomfortable sometimes, right?
Which is good.
Which is good. But sometimes that's a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I won't get into like all the stuff that happened, but I will say this, like a lot of the things that led them to leave Marlena led that partnership, like caused our partnership to dissolve, like the whole relationship with the landlord and all that stuff.
Yep.
Like it was just a tense situation that was born in a tense time.
Yeah.
Right. And like, they took over that place at the height of COVID, and they didn't actually own the restaurant.
Yeah.
It was the landlord that did. Right. So like, they didn't have any leverage in the situation. And I'm happy for them now. I'm glad that they're...
Besides the legacy.
Well, besides the legacy, of course. Yeah. And like all that insight that they developed at Marlena,
that's true.
They were able to take to Seven Adams, and they're crushing it. They're doing great.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, at that point, when I was getting ready to leave, it was also a calculation of like, how do I design my life in such a way that I get to do what I love, but I can still have a family.
Yeah. Not work 7 days a week.
You know about this, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't have the luxury of having someone in my life that was in my industry either, or shared like my passion for it. So it's not like there was any overlap. Like I literally had to live a bit of a double life.
Yeah.
And so as I kind of looked to what I was going to do next, to me, the obvious answer was like, oh, just take a corporate job.
Sure.
Go back to like where you started, right? Back to business. And I tried so hard.
Yeah.
And I even got offers.
Yeah.
But while I was going through that process, I was also very actively looking at brick and mortar spaces.
Yeah.
And I had legitimately toured 42 different locations. Didn't find a single thing I liked. And I was getting ready to put a pin in it. And I don't remember why I hadn't checked Craigslist, but I remembered that's how Dave and Serena got Marlena.
Wow.
So I was like, maybe I should check Craigslist.
Sure.
And sure enough, there's a picture of this market on 22nd and Dolores, which I don't know if you know this, but my dad lived on Jersey and Dolores for 10 years when I was a kid.
Wow.
In the 90s.
Yeah.
And we'd gone down to this store.
Wow.
So I knew, I was like, okay, this looks super familiar.
Yeah.
I'm going to go check it out. And I walked in. And were you in the neighborhood back when it was Mama's?
Yeah.
You were?
Yeah.
So, like, you remember what it was, right?
Like a normal corner store.
Corner.
Like a little bodega.
Little bodega.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like, little dingy, but, like, not in a super off-putting way.
Heavy investment in the spirits. There was
Heavy-
way more liquor.
Heavy investment in the spirits.
But it
for
was
sure.
everything. It was Smirnoff and Grey Goose and whatever you could get.
Whatever you could get.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think that was part of the model, too, like, because the owner who I purchased it from owned Neighborly.
Oh, okay.
And so I think they were trying to leverage the liquor license to be able to supply stuff to the Neighborly locations. It was weird, and it was also like very pre-COVID model.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, like, when COVID hit, he's like, "Oh shit! Like, this whole thing that I had planned, I can't do."
Yeah.
So he was getting ready. He like really wanted to offload it, and that was great because my buying position, I had like so much more leverage in that negotiation, and we were able to get a really good deal on the space. That was like summer of 2022. And then it was just a matter of waiting for like liquor license transfer to go through and then get the keys. And like my thing is like, you know, the store it's the only space that's around for 2 blocks north, south, east, west, right?
Yep.
So I felt this responsibility from like right away that there should be continuation and like as little of an interruption in service to the neighborhood as possible. So it closed end of September, reopened 9 days later.
Yeah.
As Dolores Deluxe.
Yeah, I remember it was like fast. I remember
really
driving
fast.
past it one day and going like, "Fuck is Dolores Deluxe? Like, what happened to Mama's?" And I just remember like getting home and telling Bianca, I'm like, "Hey, you remember that little corner store?" She's like, "Yeah." I go, "It's something new now." She's like, "What do you mean? We were just there last week." I was like, "I don't know what I mean. It's different."
It's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a lot of planning, a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
But also it was like, I've never owned a store before. Like, again, flat-footed.
Yep.
Like, I don't know, but we'll figure it out and we'll like have a conversation with people and like find out what they want.
Yeah.
And now we're like 2 years in and I'm still figuring out like what people want and figuring out what I want too, you know? I think that's another thing in like any creative process is like, where do you fit in all of it? Without like bringing your ego into it either.
Right.
It's just like, you need to live the thing that you do.
It's a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's got to be true to you.
Yeah.
Right. And I think I'm just now like finding what that is, but it's a process. Yeah.
It's been so cool to
I
kind
just
of
went on for like 4 hours. Holy
That's
shit.
okay. No, it's fine. That's good. It's good. It means it's a good setting. You
Okay.
feel comfortable. That's important.
I had a lot to say apparently.
That's okay. I
need to like talk to my therapist about this.
That's who I am.
Thank
I'm
you.
here. I'm
Thank
here
you.
for
Thank
this.
you.
You're valid for feeling the way that you feel. No,
All right.
I don't know. I've never been
$120 an hour.
Yeah,
There we go.
exactly. Yeah.
And you offer sliding scale?
That's no.
Okay,
Never.
cool.
No.
Cool.
It's been so cool to kind of like watch the evolution of the store, and there's been so many brands that I've gone in and I've like had, and like so many things that I've picked up there because it's more than just like a corner store. It's more than just like a bodega, right? Like you have Mitchell's ice cream from the local ice cream shop.
Yeah.
You know, you had this Mama's hot sauce when you first opened from LA.
Yeah, from LA.
And I got it and I was all excited about it. I'm like, look at this new hot sauce.
yeah.
And I remember just like I posted it on my Instagram stories that I was excited about it, and they like started following me. And I was
cool.
like, what the fuck is this? And
yeah.
that was
Nice.
before the Reluctant Som podcast.
Yeah.
It was just my personal
Nice.
podcast. I was like,
Nice.
this feels weird.
That's awesome.
But that made me feel connected to
I
small
wouldn't
business.
know that. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's a small business, and you're supporting these other small businesses, and I would go and get a sliced raclette cheese, and I would like make like little garlic bread for myself when Bianca was pregnant.
Strong.
She wasn't eating quite as much, or when she was breastfeeding and she wasn't eating quite as much, and yeah, I mean we still pop in once a week, and the Luxies, and when the Luxies went away for a while, and then when they came back, the return of the Luxie,
the return of the Luxie.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
It's been a journey, yeah, for sure.
There's a lot to touch back on, but I mean, what do you think? Like the story really reminds me a lot of kind of like Tyler Canning, who's been on the podcast as well, who's at Pacino now. His first restaurant job was Lazy Bear. It was like was a barista, and then went to work at Lazy Bear. I mean, it was just the desire, and you were just in the right spot. Is that what took you to EMP?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I think I probably would have ended up at a restaurant.
Sure. Okay.
Because it's literally what I've wanted since I was a child. Like, it's all my inputs were food related.
Yeah.
Like at all points.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt in my mind the output would have also been food related, but you don't know, right? Like life just fucking puts you in the right spot, and then it's just a matter of like whether you want to take that opportunity, like if it feels right, and it definitely felt right at the time. So yeah, it's and looking at like all the decisions that led me here, big part of why I took over this job is because of a relationship I'm no longer in. Right.
Yeah.
And that wasn't my plan.
Right.
But that's what happened.
Yeah.
And that was really tough too, to be honest. Like I was engaged to somebody and found out they weren't who I thought they were, and that was 6 months into my spot being open.
Soul crushing.
Yeah. And somebody I'd known since I was a kid.
Yeah.
So yeah, like extra soul crushing.
Yeah.
And I don't know a lot of people in the Bay, to be honest, even though my family's here.
Yeah.
Like they live in the East Bay.
Well, you were gone for so long.
I was gone for so long. Yeah. I didn't get a chance to work in the restaurant industry here pre-COVID.
Well, and then when you did come into work, you were working 7 days a week, effectively.
I was working 7 days and in a different role, in like a very different kind of restaurant too, where it wasn't a very big team. Like I took sections a lot of nights.
Yeah.
So, which I loved, by the way, but it was just like we didn't have the same kind of culture, right? So I didn't know a lot of people, and I'm still like, I thank God for the shop too, because I mean, I got to meet you, right? Yeah. And I have so many personal friends, like dear friends, and people that are now part of my extended family that I've met through the shop, and they like literally saved my life. Like I was in such a bad place, like mentally last year, and to be able to sit here and talk about it without it like triggering all these like crazy feelings, like in a year's time, a lot of that is due to the community that's like supported me financially, obviously, but like emotionally and like, yeah, man, like this place, people really show up for each other.
Right.
And that's why I want to pay it forward. Like, that's why I feel this sense of responsibility of like everything I do, I want it to rise the tide, right?
Yeah.
For as many people as I can. I fall short, and like certainly my bandwidth is at a really weird place right now where it's withering away.
Sure, yeah.
But I believe in my intention, and I believe like I will get to a point where I can follow through on all those goals that I have set out for myself and for my community. It's just going to take time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you really kind of hit the nail on the head though about like high tide raises all ships, and that's true for like, Bianca and I, we have Emery. Emery's 2 now, and we were like, when she was first born, we were going to Whole Foods all the time. So it was easy. It's on the way. We can get everything in one stop, And we kept saying like we want to get back to the point where we're like being intentional with our spending, intentional with our consumption, and like that was really important for us. And it became this idea of like, well, if we're going to go to Whole Foods, we should only go to Whole Foods like every 2 months. And then little things, like most of the time, another shout out to you is like, you go to Whole Foods and stuff's cheap. You go to corner stores, convenience stores, and you're paying for the convenience, right? A bag of chips is $8 for a little bag or whatever, and you go like, whatever, I guess I have to do it. And when Whole Foods was so close, we're like, well, it makes sense to just go to the grocery store. but your stuff was the same price,
Yeah.
and in some cases less than Whole
Yeah.
Foods.
Yeah.
And so we were like, what makes more sense for us to come here?
Yeah.
And then we started shopping at, Molly Stone's, which obviously is not
Sure.
small,
Sure.
but doing a lot more farmers market
Yeah.
trips and stuff. And it was very much like, we realized that you were putting in time and effort into getting these hot sauces and these local brands and like making your own shit, that we were like, well, like we can also support local more, right? It became important to us. Like,
Yeah.
so
No,
I think,
and to your point, like I think a lot of people are having those conversations either like actively or even just in their heads, like in their internal like dialogue, where it's like, or I guess monologue. Dialogue would be schizophrenia. But anyway, that's all good.
Yeah.
Like, but you know what I mean. Like I think people here, and I talk about this a lot. I think San Francisco is very good about actually like walking the talk.
Yeah.
The issue is that there just aren't enough people here
right now. Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
And there isn't enough tourism to support the lower population, and then so therefore there's just like too many small businesses for the number of people.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's supply and demand. It's a classic supply and demand issue.
Yeah.
And so like my job is to create more demand. And my hope is that by making enough things that people need to try, supply will also rise somehow.
Right. Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like people will want to come visit. It will become a destination in
Right.
addition to being a local spot, and
Yeah.
that's really the only way our model works.
Right.
Right. Like, I think there are other ways to do this business that are much easier. Like I know that actually for a
Sure.
fact. Like in terms of the number of hours we are open, we're open 13 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Like then we do breakfast and lunch 7 days a week. Like that's great.
Yeah.
I'm really happy that we do that, and I don't want to change that.
Yeah.
Is that necessarily like on paper the smartest thing? Probably not.
Right.
But I also, again, this sort of like not feeling comfortable and figuring it out as you go. I believe enough in the end goal that I believe we'll get to it.
Right.
It'll just look a little different than what we had imagined.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So you just got to
Absolutely.
trust the process a little bit.
Yeah. And I think too, like you've been there for 2 years and like people know you.
Yeah.
They walk in and they see you and you're the face, right?
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah,
that's so
true.
cool. And I think that like, even in the sense of like you said, wanting to have a family and kind of like wanting to move into this like position where you have more time, you have more freedom. You're probably not getting quite as much free time as you hope. You may at some point, hopefully.
Well, to your point, it's more freedom than free time.
Freedom than free time, right?
I think that's important.
Yeah.
Because I'm always going to do something.
Yeah.
I'm always like,
Right.
I think people who've worked like high pressure service, like we just want to feel.
You're constantly moving.
You want to be moving,
Yeah,
and I don't want that to change. Like I
Right.
think there's a youthful energy to that, and like I want to feel that way when I'm 80. Like
Yeah,
that'd be
yeah.
awesome. But I gotta have the freedom to like disengage,
right.
and like invest time in family
Or
if I
try
have
something
to.
new,
try something new.
or discover a new hobby or
Yeah.
new passion or a new recipe or
Yeah.
whatever. I think that like to me it reminds me a lot of one of my favorite places ever in the country is Stein's Deli in New Orleans, and Dan is there all the fucking time. He's there all the time. I went for 4 years. I went different times. He was always there. And he's I don't know if you've been or if you've been.
I've never been. I mean, I've been to New Orleans, but I haven't been so long.
It's over in the Garden District.
Okay.
They sell sandwiches.
You live
it's like
there?
a deli. No, I just would go visit
Just
from
go there.
Galveston.
Okay, cool,
yeah.
cool.
And because there's no gambling. And so,
Okay,
you
got
can
it.
pop over. And also New Orleans is a fucking incredible food
Yeah, it's a
scene.
great place. Yeah.
And so over in the Garden District, there's Stein's Deli. And I actually went because my friend told me about how incredible the beer selection was. And, I would go to this great beer bar in Galveston that's still there, Brews Brothers. And he was like, oh, if you go to New Orleans, like, I need you to go here and I need you to pick up a couple cases of beer for me. I said, sure, whatever, fine. And so I like walk in this, it's like a deli, and he has like a couple like big fridges full of all these different beers. And I'm like, this is awesome. And then he goes like, ask him for more beer. And I like walk in, I go like, why would I need more beer? There's like 200 different beers.
Yeah,
here,
right.
And so I walk up to the counter and there's this guy and he's just sitting there and he's like younger and he's just like, he kind of reminds me of like like a bulldog in a way. He's just like very like
Cool.
flat face, you know? And I was like, hey, the beer selection is really cool. And he was like, thanks. And I was like, yeah, I was told there's more beer somewhere. He's like, yeah, come on. And I was like, okay. And we walked through the kitchen and we walked by the dumpster. And I'm like, is this guy going to fucking kill me? Like, what is this?
Yeah, what's going on here?
And he opens this like mobile. Did you ever have, at school, did they ever have like mobile classrooms?
Not in my school, but yeah, I've seen them. Yeah,
so it was like that, but it was full of beer, and it was all this beer we couldn't get in Texas.
Wow.
And I ended up buying like 5 cases of beer, and I was like on my way out, and he was just like, it's still as dry as ever. And I went back the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and then I went back a year later, and it's still every year he's like this guy that, you know, he'll still wish me happy birthday on my birthday every year on Facebook, you know, and I'm just like. It's so cool, and
That's super cool.
And he's still there all the time, and he does pop-ups with coffee shops, and he's like constantly like, you know,
he's like in the community.
He is the community. He is the community.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. I mean,
that's awesome.
Anytime I talk about New Orleans, that's my benchmark.
That's so
it's
cool.
just a great fucking sandwich and a great beer selection.
Yeah.
I mean, you could go to Commander's Palace, and you can go to all these great
and you
places.
should, and go there.
You should definitely go there.
But then. Also,
when you need a casual sandwich and that's just a great setting, that's the place. Yeah,
that's so cool.
And I think that's also too like that fucking Monte Cristo. What is it called? The Cubano, the croissant Cubano. I had
the Cubano croissant.
Awesome.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, it was so good.
Yeah, it's funny. The simple things really hit.
Yeah,
really hit.
Yeah.
But it's how you make people feel more than the product,
right?
And that's a bit of the struggle I have maybe sometimes in San Francisco, is that like everything is really product driven.
Yeah.
And like waiting in line and going through the whole process of getting this treasured thing made by a great creator, like that's wonderful, and like we shouldn't stop doing that. But I think sometimes we lose the context a little bit in the pursuit of like precious
or exclusivity,
right? Yeah. And I think I was having this conversation with a regular just before this podcast. I was at the store and they were talking about like how important it and valuable it might be for me to give a little bit more context to like why we do certain things, and or like it like on our podcast, like introducing a little bit of like the why. And again, it's like I know that's right. At the same time, I remember how good it felt for me to discover a band or a restaurant that other people didn't know about, not because like that made me feel important, but because it made me feel like they were small enough that I felt a sense of ownership over their success.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be a part of that success, right? And I think you're playing the long game when you position yourself that way, but it does create, I think, a much more meaningful like relationship between yourself as a brand and as like and as the face of a brand and the people that are engaging with that brand on a daily basis. And like our store is literally shaped by the people that walk through that place. Right. It's so small.
Yeah.
If you bring in weird energy, we're going to feel it for like 25 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like seriously. And like,
just got to sage it.
You got to sage it. Like literally, I'm not even joking. I just got sage it because the teachers across the street buy it to sage out their classrooms.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah.
But yeah, so like, I think it's tough because we look like a corner store. We do. Yeah. Like, and that was intentional. And there was the big discussion amongst the team about like, should we really be putting Doritos up front and like candy up front? Like, shouldn't we put like our more precious products or our more like ours? And that's a real conversation that you need to have. And like, yes, I think that, yes, we probably should put our things up front, and we do. And we pepper them in. Right. And on surprise days or there's always like something new going on. But the first thing you see is like a shit ton of candy. Yeah. And it's only after you like look up and you're forced to be present and you're not like stuck to your phone and you're like, and I point something out to you, or Sergio points something out to you, or Juan points something out to you, like that you actually see how much care and intention is put into every little detail. And then it's like, oh, wait, I want to like learn more about this. And then sometimes you don't want to, like, that's the other thing too, is like, I'm not going to force you either. And like, that's cool.
Yeah.
But the people that do want it, like, they get a little treat. They get a little reward.
Yeah.
You know, they get to unpack all these layers.
So. Well, and even for return customers like us, like every time I go in, I still do laps, and I'm still looking for different things because I'm always like,
that's awesome.
There's something new coming, or there's I didn't see this before. What's this? What's that? And I'm always excited to go in and just for an excuse to like look at the shelves and see what's new and what's happening. Because you go to Whole Foods, I know what bread brands they carry. Yeah. I know what aisle it's in.
Yeah.
I know how to get in, get it, and get the fuck out. Yeah. But like, I don't want to be in there.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in there. Yeah. And like when I come into Dolores Deluxe, like I want to come in and I want to be in there. Like obviously I want to buy my stuff. I want to go home and sit on my fucking couch.
Yeah,
but
sure.
It's not like, not that it's, I wouldn't say that it's unpleasant to be in Whole Foods. It's just,
well, it's a routine thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's sort of like highway hypnosis.
I don't feel anything about it.
Right. Yeah, it's apathy.
Yeah,
and
apathy.
Like, we don't want apathy anymore in this generation. Like, we've got enough apathy.
Yeah.
Seriously, we do. Like, we do. So why not, like, not to be, like, annoying about it, but, like, why not, like, sprinkle in some whimsy here and there? And, like, I don't know, there's something really, really special about, like, feeling like a kid.
Yeah.
Like... You know it. You
discovering
have a kid.
Something new.
You get to see the world through your kid's eyes. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
And like, when you're creative and you can make people feel that way, even if they don't realize that's how they feel, like you can see it in their eyes. They're reliving that sort of. Yeah. Like, dude, that's living.
Right.
Like, the most alive people on the planet are kids.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be like a kid all the time.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my soapbox.
I think it's really cool though too, because like you know, that's one of the things that I think of. Like, I have 2 points to make, so I'm trying to figure out what order to put them in. One is just kind of like that the hospitality industry is something that you've brought into this store. Yeah, and most retail concepts are not hospitality. There's some places you go, some shops you go to, and the people are really friendly and they're really nice, and that's great. Yeah. But like, it doesn't have quite the same mentality of like, make an experience, make it memorable.
Right.
Even if it's short, make it memorable.
Right. Yeah.
And then the other thing that I was going to say is it's those little things, like you said, like, you know, a kid, this is also a two-parter, in a restaurant, like my dad who's passed was a very simple man. He was a plumber, right? But when he would go to a restaurant and they would have a chilled salad plate, he'd go like, I want to go back here because it shows they cared. It's that extra step. Everything else he could give a fuck about. You know, the steak was off. Whatever. It's still good. Yeah. I'll still eat it. Yeah. You know, I'll still go back. Yeah. You know, it could be anything. Service could be like fine. Yeah. You know, it doesn't matter. But the chilled salad plate was a big thing, and then chilled salad fork was like life changing for him. He went somewhere and had a chilled salad fork.
I don't even think I've had a chilled salad fork.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
So, that's like finding the cold spot on your pillow like every night.
Nice. Yeah. And
wow, your dad knew his shit.
Right. Yeah, he knew what he liked. And I think awesome. and I think it's little things like that that can make and break experiences. And then the other thing that I was going to say is, however much it kind of just, I'm like, yes, Emery, yes. Yeah. She sees that cat clock on the wall. And ever since she's seen the cat clock, it's like a big deal. Like, meow, meow. And I go, yes, Emery, it's the cat clock. Yeah. And she's always wants to go see the cat clock. So it's cute. It's also something that like I think of when I'm going to think of her childhood, and whether you're there forever or you're not, and you go in to do something else, like it's always going to be that's the store where the cat clock was that she would always get amped about every time.
That's so. Thank you for sharing that with me, because like these are little things, these are little micro expressions, if you will, where you just don't really think about it. But you're right, like we are like from a city planning perspective woven into your life.
Right.
We're kind of forced into each other's lives, right?
Yeah.
And so the choices I make, however small, I knew this intellectually, but I guess it never really connected until you just said this, like on an emotional level, like, oh wow, yeah, like that clock that my ex-girlfriend got me for Christmas that I thought was cute.
Yeah.
That had an effect on your
It's
family.
a huge
like,
focal point for my daughter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Yeah.
One of the other things that we kind of touched on that we haven't quite dove into that I want to dive into is your podcast.
Yeah.
Because, you know, at this point I've interviewed chefs, I've interviewed somms, I've interviewed general managers, I've interviewed retailers, and you kind of fit into all of those boxes, but you're the first podcaster that I'm interviewing.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Oh, that's funny. Well, I would hardly call myself a podcaster. I have like 5 episodes out, and I don't know what I'm doing. It's just like everything that I've ever done.
You're doing them regularly, you're a podcaster.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's it.
Well, that is one thing I have learned about, like, through my experience of the shop, is like just being consistent. Even, you know, you said you used the term make or break, and I thought I've been thinking about that a lot, because there is this tendency in society to feel like if we don't crush it, and I think it's also a bit of like a service, like restaurant service mentality.
Sure.
Like if you don't crush it, then it's over.
Right.
Because unfortunately, like, especially from a restaurant perspective, the model is so reliant on you crushing it all the time, right? Failure is always an option for us. It could very well happen next year. Could also not happen. There's a pretty good chance it won't now, but for a while there was a very good chance that it was going to happen, and we can touch on that if you want. But what I've realized is that it's just about showing up, and it's about like leading with your values, and again, trying to make it work for you, and like be a life that you want to live and live in and live with. And so
authenticity.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think, you know, the journey of getting this place to where it is, and it's not even arrived yet, right? Has been very scary, very lonely, I think. And I think it's lonely for pretty much anybody that's like putting themselves out there and putting money on the line.
Yeah.
It's also literally been like crazy. Like we had 4 break-ins in a year, and
I just remember driving by and seeing the plywood in the window and going like, please not again.
Not again.
Like, God.
Yeah. It was crazy.
It's the same fucking guy.
The same guy, like 3 out of the 4 times. No, it's the same guy 3 out of 4 times. I was like subpoenaed to testify in his trial and everything. It was like so weird. But like that stuff was happening, and in a weird way, because of all the stuff that was happening in my personal life, it actually felt like more manageable because of like
was able to distract you,
yeah,
or maybe give you focus.
Yeah, for sure. But like also at the expense of everything else. Like I was holding it all together, and then we went through this insane permitting period and permitting experience, and like honestly it was brought on by like made some dubious hiring decisions, then those people like put the store at risk, and then that led to all this other stuff, and then we basically went from being able to serve all of our cool stuff under our commissary license. Commissary closed. Tried to do the thing unpermitted, which I still recommend. Honestly. and then you know, then we got just hammered by the city, and literally I was looking at our numbers like from last year. Our year 1 was like pretty strong for a year 1. And we're, because of that closure, 25% less in revenue. Because we were just hobbling through. And this is now in retrospect, like we probably should have closed. And then reopened. But I didn't know how long it was going to take. I knew it was going to take a while, but I didn't know it was going to take 8 months.
2020.
I know, of course. Of course. But like all this to say that like I was going through this process while like trying to piece my personal life together. And I didn't know how to ask for help. And I didn't know how to slow down and take the time I needed to like talk to people that I really respect and care about. And so now that I'm like starting to come above water, and we sort of crystallize our offering a little bit, like it's really coming together. Like I'm really proud of our lunch service. I'm really happy with where breakfast is going. You know, the Luxies are back. The pop-ups are back. We're going to have a lot more programming. Like, you know, we have a holiday party coming up this week, and then literally starting January, we're going to have a pop-up every week. We're going to bring stand-up comedy back. We're going to do a jazz night.
Awesome.
I'm going to do like a tasting menu out on the patio. Like
So
all this
cool.
cool
Oh my
stuff that
God.
like, you know, like I can't even dream of what like we will be doing, you know, because couldn't even conceive of what we're doing now
Right.
like 3 months ago.
Right,
So, but all this to say that like I kind of felt like I was doing all this not alone, but like it felt like I could have gotten more support, more insight, and that's where this idea of like doing a podcast came. It's like I love our pop-ups because our community comes together.
Right.
But often we're just in the shits,
Yeah.
like trying to help the pop-up like get their thing together.
Yeah.
And so how do I like really take time and ask people questions and like learn from people? And I have to tell you, like, no matter what happens with this podcast, best use of my time so far, because I've learned so much. Like in this conversation, I've learned, holy shit, like I need to, like, I needed to talk to somebody about what happened over the last few years, and I haven't done it in a contained way like this.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. But like,
Of course.
but like also now I got it out of my system. So you're welcome, everyone. But also like, everyone, what I'm realizing, and I think what we talked about this a little bit earlier, is like everybody really wants to be in community. And I think that insight really came through loud and clear during COVID. And there are a lot of good things that came from COVID that have kind of fallen by the wayside because of life and because of capitalism, because of all this stuff.
Capitalism. Yeah.
But I feel we want to like keep some of those things alive, and we want to keep them going. And so this sort of medium is really, I think, a great starting point, right? Like connecting similar-minded and intended people towards a common goal of like making where they live feel more like home.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I know you're kind of going at it from a more like industry and certainly beverage lens, but yeah, you're right. Like the beverage is a big part of what we do. But I also like, I've always viewed beverage as a conduit. Same for food. I don't see a hierarchy in anything that I do. I would say I would like the people is really what like brings it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure you would agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, like what you're touching on, like the podcast is so important, and I've learned so much, and I feel like it's made me a better listener, and I feel like it's made me like more engaged, and I also feel like it's a great practice to like sit down and not look at your fucking phone for an hour and
totally.
a half, and just have a human connection.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's very much like a lost art.
Yeah.
But, you know, to touch back into like the community thing that you were saying is like, I think, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Like you're kind of like the anchor in the neighborhood, or at least our neighborhood, for like a local community place. And, you know, yeah, during the pandemic, like it was a support local, and it was like, you know, like, oh, there's a pop-up, like let's do that. And it was about like getting to know your neighbors a little bit more because you were home, and then life kind of just like turned back on, and it was, we went back to the convenience model. And the convenience model is kind of like a stripped down human experience. Again, I walk into Whole Foods because I know where everything is.
Right.
I don't have to look for anything.
Right.
And I just autopilot my way out, or I can look at my phone and shop like this, you know?
Totally.
And
Yeah.
and, you know, it removes the humanity from it. But ultimately, like, it doesn't matter, you know, what we do for a living. It doesn't matter where we live. It doesn't matter how much money we have. Like, we're all humans, and we all need that human connection, I think. So, and the tech jobs and the remote jobs, I think, can be very isolating also. And I think that it's just good for us to kind of like have a way to unite people again.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, it's not gonna be perfect either.
Right. Yeah.
Like we just got to try a little bit harder, and like there's a reason the convenience economy works.
Yeah.
it's convenient.
Yeah.
It feels easy sometimes
Yeah.
to like, if you're not feeling it, like, dude, sometimes it's hard for me to like go for a walk in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Because like I kind of still feel on a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's great. Like I love that. But if I'm having a particularly shitty day, I don't want people to see me that way, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I get wanting to disconnect sometimes, but that's in service of then connecting more when I'm in that place, right? And it's just about like trying a little bit harder every day, and also not like feeling bad if you don't get it right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Having a little bit more grace with yourself.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's a big thing that like you also touched on earlier, which was like this like need for perfection or this need to fucking crush it, you know? And I think that it's great in so many ways, and I think that it's a really important like desire, but if that's where your self-worth is,
Right.
that's concerning,
Right.
because there's so much that's out of your control,
Yeah.
you know, and even the stuff that is in your control, you're never going to be perfect 100% of the time, and that's what makes you human.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Otherwise, you would get an AI, and
Right.
the AI would do your job. Right.
Totally.
Yeah. Remove
Totally.
the human error, because that's part of it.
Well, also interpersonally, like
Yeah.
that it's holding people to a reasonable standard and an empathetic standard. I think it's empathy.
Yeah.
Like, and again, I'm not like trying to make this whole episode like woo woo, but
No.
it's just stuff that I've been thinking about a lot, especially in the context of the election.
Right.
And like, that was another big like push for me, because I could see the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
Like before the podcast, I was like, I don't know, this isn't looking good. Like I feel like we need to talk to each other more, and like, I really appreciate the platform that you're offering, providing to people, and creating. It's not only good for the industry like as a whole, and feeling this sort of like representation, but it's especially important for the city, especially important for San Francisco. And I don't know, like, I really care about this place. Yes, I was born here. I don't know that like my emotional connection to San Francisco is like that much stronger because I was born here, because I like left when I was 6. But I live here, and I want this place to be, I want it to feel good.
Yeah.
And I don't want to feel weird about where I live, because like everyone's talking shit about it.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I don't want to feel weird because like there's weird shit happening either. Like I'd like for the weird shit to happen less.
Yeah.
But I also understand it's a process, and it happens everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
like so much weird shit everywhere.
A lot of weird shit
all over the world.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we're lucky to live in this neighborhood, or be, you know, have businesses like you in the neighborhood. Is like, it's a relatively quiet neighborhood.
it is, yeah.
You know, we're so lucky, and I mean, I would be remiss to not say that there are certain areas like 6th and Minna downtown that are areas that I don't want to be and that I don't want to walk in.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
But there's 80% of San Francisco that I'm totally shut off, not worried about a single fucking thing. And I was raised to keep my head on a swivel, right? All the time. But like, there's so many times I'm just like walking down the street. You know, Sanchez Street is closed for the slow street. And it's Halloween, and I was walking, and I heard, Chris. I was like, somebody talking to me? You know, this is completely clueless.
Yeah.
And it was Chef Dana from Boulevard, and she was
no
like,
way.
"How are you?" And I got to meet her wife and her kid, and it was so cool to see her and catch up with her.
Yeah.
But it was just like, we're such a small city,
for sure.
and like you said, sometimes I don't want to be on, but I feel like I'm not. But it's easy to switch it, right?
Yeah,
you know,
sure,
especially
totally.
when it's authentic. Right?
Totally. No, that's true. That's true. And I think like that's also part, like the longer one lives in San Francisco, the more used to the run-in you get, you know, and like the, you know, the like famous or infamous stop and chat that like Larry David hates on.
Yeah.
Like I think it's actually a very big part of living in San Francisco, because we don't live on top of each other like we do in New York, to the point that we have to actually like self-isolate and compartmentalize.
Yeah.
We live close enough that like you're going to run into an ex within 15 minutes of any day, but far enough that like, you know, maybe you're not on the same commute like
Right.
every single day,
Yeah.
you know? So, no, it's cool. It's an adjustment. It's also like since New York, like the longest I've lived in a place.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and I live across the street from the shop
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
So like I didn't mention that, but I'm like, yeah, I'm a few blocks away from you.
Easy
I'm
to
double
overwork.
dipping.
Can you see it through your
can.
window? Ooh.
My living room and my bedroom.
Ooh.
Yeah. It came in handy during the break-ins, though,
Yeah,
I
I'm
gotta
sure.
say. 'Cause
Yeah.
I just had the binocular and
Yeah.
be like, yep, that's a window.
It's the same guy too. Yeah, yeah.
That window's gone.
Yeah,
But no, now I'm good about. I'm using all the therapy words this episode. I'm like good about the boundaries. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I am.
That's good. That's important.
No, it's
That's
good.
important.
It's good.
Yeah. What one other thing that I just wanted to touch on,
Yeah.
and because it's kind of cool to see where you've kind of brought things full circle, is like you know, you wanted to cook, you cooked a lot as a kid, right? And you had a catering business that you were running, and then you went into full front of house mode. And you know, myself included, you know, I started as like a busboy, dishwasher, and I did those things, and I moved up to like line cook and server, and I was doing both at the same time, and eventually I had to make a jump.
Yeah.
And then I always was like, I want to get in the back. I want to get in the back, and I would go apply for a job, and I would say like, I'd really like to pick a couple shifts up in the kitchen, and they go, we'll discuss it.
We'll discuss it. Yeah.
And then I was just always stuck in the front of house.
For sure.
Do you want to take over our wine stuff? I was like, I guess sure, yeah.
Yeah.
How how come it took you so long to go back into the kitchen? Or like to go to culinary school and then to go back into
the culinary school thing was like purely COVID.
Right.
And purely like just
because you had time probably.
Yeah, I have time. I had like just enough resources, and like I had like legitimately thought I was moving to France forever.
Yeah.
Like when I first initially came up with that idea.
Right.
So I'd sold like all my shit, my ceramic selection,
Yeah.
and my like cookbook collection, like all that stuff.
Oh.
It's fine. Like I can rebuild it, but like, it's funny. Like I'd always been sort of the kitchen liaison in front of house.
Sure.
Like I was the guy that like did all the menu descriptions, and
That's
eventually
great.
like I designed all the menus and like helped write menus, and so I'd always had my foot in it. And then the other thing is like, in speaking to your experience, like, oh, well, do you want to take over our wine stuff? It's like, well, okay. It's obvious that the person who's really interested in kitchen stuff would, if they're stuck in front of house, quote unquote, if they're in front of house, they would gravitate toward beverage because that's what connects.
I get to make things.
You get to make things.
Yeah.
You get to taste things. You
Share
get to collaborate with the chef.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense, and that's also what initially drew me to beverage. I was sort of in the early stage of my time at EMP when Dustin was the wine director, and John Ross, who's now in MS, was like the head somm. He like trained me like for my exams and stuff, and like I was such a little. I had such a shit. I was such a shit. But I learned so much, and I'm so grateful for that experience because it obviously is informing like what I do now and what I did at Marlena as well, because I built the wine list there. But I don't know. I think I discovered just like how happy it made me to actually make the thing rather than imagine the thing.
Right.
Because I've always been like, frankly, if there's something I'm actually good at, out of all the things that I said, like I'm not sure. Like I feel good about like menu writing. I know how to write a menu.
Yeah.
Executing it is a different thing.
Sure.
But I know how to write a menu, and I think I'd always relied on the talent and the expertise of a chef to create the final product. And that always felt good until COVID, where like this Few for All project, for example, I felt like I couldn't really follow through on everything that I wanted because the chefs had to go back to work, and like I couldn't make a thing.
Right.
I didn't feel confident enough making a
Yeah.
thing. So certainly, I think like culinary school kind of gave me a little bit of confidence. Working professionally at a bakery, like that gave me a little bit of confidence. But also like, this is my business.
Yeah.
I can't afford a chef.
Sure.
No fucking chef is going to want to take over a corner store. Like no like actual
Right.
like trained pedigreed chef is going to want to take over that little kitchen the way that it's designed.
Yep.
With no fucking dry storage,
Yeah.
no refrigeration.
Yeah.
It's a shit show.
I know.
It is, for anybody who goes to the shop, like, please know, it's a shit show.
Yeah.
I think it's a shit show. I'm not happy with it.
Sure.
It will get better.
Yeah.
And it's gotten better already.
Yeah.
But I don't feel comfortable welcoming, like, a trained chef into my space and saying, here you go, you got the keys to the castle. Mm-hmm. So I had to figure it out.
Yeah.
Now, I have a good palate. Mm-hmm. I know how to write a menu. I have some kitchen experience. And frankly, we're not that busy.
Yeah.
So I can handle it.
Yeah.
It was catering season recently, and that tested my abilities.
Sure.
We got through it, and people were really happy. And I'm now, like, feeling more and more confident. But I think, to answer your question, I genuinely think it didn't feel like it was my place.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, like, I already didn't feel like it
you
was
had
my
the
place.
Imposter syndrome again.
But, like, to the max.
Right, yeah.
You know, like, because I already felt out of place in the front of house.
Yeah.
So now it's very much like I just got to trust and not care.
Yeah.
And not, like, out of disrespect for the careers of like all these, like, I have so much reverence for this career. That's part of why I feel like I don't belong in it. But I fucking love it.
Yeah.
It makes me so happy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so happy writing a menu. I'm so happy sharing, like, my food ideas and, like, like, waxing poetic about fucking carrot tops with our neighbor Olaf, who's, like, obsessed with ingredients and tinkering and cooking at his house, and, like, and I also really like creating, and so that's why our menu changes, like, at least once a week.
I know you post new menu. I'm like, fuck, I didn't get to try that sandwich.
We'll bring them back. I mean, if there's anything you really like, I'm always down to bring some stuff back. But I that's also part of it. It's like you want to drive demand.
Yeah.
So if something doesn't stick around for very long, it's mostly because I don't have a walk-in.
Yeah.
I can only make 2 quarts of a thing, and that's about it.
Oh, no.
That's true. It's true.
Yeah,
But that also means, like, okay, cool. You get a little window to try a cool thing. If you missed out on it and that really bums you out, next time I post something, it's going to get you out of your house.
Yeah.
And that's going to keep the place running.
Yeah.
And so, like, I talked about this on a recent episode of our podcast, but we did the calculation, and I don't think I clarified it well enough, but we're 17 packs of gum a day away from not losing money.
Wow.
Okay. That's manageable.
That's manageable.
We can do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's doable.
That's like 3.5 sandwiches.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially when you talk sandwiches.
Yeah,
right?
When you talk sandwiches.
Yeah. When I also think that it's great because that also kind of feeds into the pop-up idea of, like, it's not necessarily exclusivity in the sense of, like, you can't have it. It's about, like, capturing the moment while you can.
Yeah, while you can.
Right. Yeah. And not that it won't come again, and not that there won't be another pop-up, but just kind of that, like, it's here now.
Yeah.
So if you want to do it, do it. Yeah. And if not, you're going to have to wait for the next time.
Yeah. But that's also, like, you have limited time and you have limited bandwidth, so you can't do it every day.
Yeah.
So it's like, in some
and if you were doing everything every day for everything that everybody ever wanted,
you'll be at my funeral in 18 months. Right? Like,
or you'd be broke.
Or
it doesn't make sense.
Exactly. Yeah. And I would love, there are some things I've made that I would love to have on every day.
Yeah.
But it's just, some of them are just way too labor intensive.
Yeah.
They're not, or, like, the food cost is just dumb. Mm-hmm. I just felt like it for 4 days. You know what I mean? And like, but it's cool, man. Like, I got to talk to Ken Turner from Turner's Kitchen, and, like, that was just so cool because he reached out to me, like, responding to a menu, being like, yo, this menu looks, like, really good. Like, congrats. And I was just blown away because, like, to me, like, at least in our neighborhood, Turner's is sort of like that's the golden child. That's, like, where you strive to be, right? And he's really, I think, dialed in the model, like, down to a science where he can still be very artful, have a lot of integrity, and make money, right? And, like, treat his staff well and his community well. So the fact that he reached out and was willing to have this conversation and was like super transparent about his numbers and his process, like, it was a bit intimidating, right? Because it's like, shit, I have so much to learn.
Mm.
But B, it made me realize, okay, we've been doing this for 3 months full time. I saw my menu from opening day, and we had 4 sandwiches.
Yeah.
And they were good.
Yeah.
But like now we have
8, 9.
No, dude, we have 15.
Oh, there's 2 pages.
There's 3 columns now.
Right.
3 columns.
Yeah.
And we just launched breakfast, and now we're doing breakfast pastries.
Yeah.
7 days a week.
Yeah. Wow.
Like I had these ideas in my mind. I just did not know how the hell we would get there.
Right.
And like frankly, how we got there is not how I imagined it.
One day at a time.
One day at a time,
Yeah.
one person at a time. I have to tell you, like, my team, I'm so lucky to have my team right now.
Yeah.
Like, and it scares me a little bit because retail, because we are still retail.
Yeah.
It's pretty transient.
Yep.
And like, I don't have the digs and the systems
Yeah.
and like I don't have all the toys to like keep people
Right.
really
Super engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just throw a lot of things at the wall and hope that it'll stick. But I know eventually, like, some of these folks won't be with us.
Yeah.
Like a year from now, 2 years from now, and that makes me sad. But it's also like I realize it's a process, and like new people will find you, and
Right.
I certainly don't want to get to that point because truly the people that are working with me have like made my dreams come true in like a matter of months.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I mean, you know the value of like a team and like working
Getting
with your
solid
wife.
players in place
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
paramount.
it's paramount.
Yeah, especially when you don't want to be there every fucking day.
Yeah, totally,
Yeah, right,
totally.
yeah.
Even though like I do want to be there every day,
Right.
I just want to be there.
Yeah.
Not like in 1,000 places.
Right, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Like, and I've never valued my spare time. Like literally, if I look back on like old resolutions or whatever, balance was always like at the top, but it was at the top every year.
Yeah.
Like I totally fucked it up for like 20 years. And now, like, I have a partner that's down in El Granada, and I, like, have to drive down, like, 30 minutes to see her.
Great. Good.
And it's fantastic.
Get out.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. That's being unplugged.
Yeah.
It's like when you go out of town. I mean, being in outside sales.
Yeah.
And probably like you're never really like fully out. But there's like, well, I can't just walk in and do something.
Yeah.
I just need to do that one thing. It's gonna have to wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
That's awesome.
How do you deal with that?
I don't know. I'll let you know when I figure it out.
Yeah.
No, it's just, I mean, it's kind of just to the point of exhaustion. I just don't worry about it when I have no energy left.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's necessarily sustainable at this point, but it's like, some nights Emery goes to bed at 8 and I lay on the couch at 8:30 and I doze off by 9.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm wake up early because she wakes up early. And then I'm awake. And then we're lucky to have daycare 10 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Gives us a lot of room for work and other projects. And again, she goes to bed and then I'm able to do a podcast. And it's like, it's great. I'm worked up after a long day, and I just sat in traffic for an hour to get her and 30 minutes to get home. And then it's all about her for a little while. And then I have a little bit of downtime and then I get to just like hang out and have a conversation with people.
Yeah.
I love it.
But then also like being with your kid is forcing you to be present too, right?
Also, and also it teaches you priority. Like all of a sudden, like if she's playing with me and she wants me to draw this thing, I don't need to respond to that email. That email can wait.
Yeah.
That text can wait. The phone call can wait. Like, I mean, most people don't really call us like 6 or 7 at night, but occasionally they do.
Sometimes,
and if it's important, I'll answer.
Yeah.
But
no, but I know what you mean. Yeah. It's
priority
like,
stacking.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. What do you think about the wine? You like the wine?
Delicious.
Yeah.
Very, very nice.
We're talking about what to pour and like, I don't know, toss around a couple ideas. And one of the things that really stood out to us was, I mean, drinkability, approachability, kind of
nice.
like fun kind of vibe, cool label. And then also just like new guys, they've been making wine now here for just a few years and they just got distributed in California, I think 6 months ago. And they're right on the border of, they're right on the border of Washington and Oregon. And so they make Washington wine and they make Oregon wine and they make Gewürztraminer Chardonnays. They make a Pinot Noir from Oregon and Washington. Willamette Bottling and a Columbia Valley Bottling. And yeah, they're cool guys. It's two dudes that open it up together. LDT, Le Double Trouble. They got in trouble because they called themselves Double Trouble, and then they got copywritten. They got or whatever, cease and desist or whatever.
God.
Yeah, and so
Le Double Trouble.
now they're LDT, and that's their branding, and it's a cute label.
No, it's cool. Yeah,
yeah.
I didn't know about the skiing thing. Skiing trouble. Yeah, I'd heard about these.
Yeah.
Things.
Yeah, and they do. It was funny. We were talking to them one day. We did a pop up at the wine bar actually with them, and we were pouring the Chard, the Pinot, and the Gewürz. Maybe it's Gruner. I think it's Gruner. Sorry.
You said Gruner.
Yeah, I think it's yeah. And they were talking about like, what do you think? You like it? I was like, yeah, I like it. I said I like the labels, like they're cute. People don't really see them at the wine bar because we're just pouring them by the glass, right? Yeah. But and then he was like, yeah, I went to this place and this guy like hated the labels and was like, what you should do, blah, 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 blah. And I said, if I was going to give you any advice, which you're not asking for it.
Sure.
I was like, just like have like a Instagram competition and give people colored pencils and have them like design your labels and make it cute and artistic or something like that. He was like, that's a great idea. And I was like,
that was your idea?
Yeah. So that's so cool. It's like a nice like collaborative thing of like people not being so prideful that they won't listen.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
and also like people not being so prideful that they feel that they must insert their authority or insert their decision upon another person.
Right.
But just like hey, have you ever thought about this thing?
Totally.
So,
but also like that's still very much a reflection maybe of like their artistic point of view to open it up to their community, right?
Yeah.
And like, it's not necessarily about how it looks, but more about how it feels and what it represents.
And if
and that resonates for me like 100% in our space. Like I don't give a shit how like things are merchandised. Yeah. Like I should, but I kind of go by what my team wants to do, and we just feel it out. And you adjust and you tinker. It's a little harder to adjust and tinker with a wine label, but like so cool. Such a cool idea.
ABC doesn't make things easy.
No, they don't. They don't make anything easy. That's so cool.
Cool.
Thanks for sharing.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your time and everything. So give everybody the name of the podcast.
Yeah. Forever Neighbor podcast on all the things, all the streaming things. It's also available on our website, which is DoloresDeluxe.com.
There we go.
Dolores Deluxe is, what is it? Corner store?
A community gathering
space where you can buy things and eat.
Yeah.
And I will say this for the single people out there, we are responsible for 3 long-term 2-year plus couples so far.
That's great.
2 of which met through our wine club. We do have a wine club. It's really fun. It's not just wine. It's 6 portions of our cookie dough every month.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
The cookies were ranked top 10 best in the city by the Chronicle. Thank you, the Chronicle.
Got some in the other room.
Yes. Baked some off. Absolutely. It's the least I can do. And what else? I mean, it's just a cool, funky little place. And it's going to continue to evolve. It will not be the same tomorrow as it was today.
Right.
And I will say this as a little shout out. Like I really credit Walter Mansky from Republique.
Okay.
I worked with that team for a few months, like after Nomad, before I started my whole thing. It's a weird husband, wife, chef team, to be honest. Like, and not, I don't mean that in a mean way. They're weird. They're very singular, but so much insight, especially around the importance of iterating, innovating.